Welcome to Almost Live, a podcast from before podcasting existed, where real life is stranger than fiction. I'm your host, Aphrodite. Welcome to episode 9, Shaking Death's Hand. I'm uncomfortable with a lot of psychology that is out there. The concept of the inner child used to fill me with distress. The idea that you had a version of yourself that was unable to grow up well when you first had the chance, and so now adult you would try to nourish that version of you in a way to grow up to be okay. It never really resonated with me until it did. I have an extensive trauma history in childhood. It turns out the idea of the inner child was something that was good to have, even before I could admit that. Because in retrospect, I can say that my inner child helped save my life, literally. In 2006, after a bout of kidney stones, I developed pyelo. Pyelonephrosis is a life-threatening kidney infection. It's one of the reasons UTIs need to be treated as soon as possible. A UTI can migrate up the ureters and into the kidneys where, thanks to the same qualities of the kidney that make it hard for chemo and radiation to penetrate, it's similarly hard for treatments to attack infections. The kidneys are very dense, and kidneys are a filter. I remember that morning feeling like I was burning up. The weather on that day was about 95 Fahrenheit or 35 Celsius. I lacked health insurance at the time in the US, so I went to Stroger Hospital, the public hospital in Chicago. I sat in the waiting room for nearly 24 hours before being seen by a screener. I remember asking for blankets because despite the sweltering heat and the lack of cooling in the waiting room, I was freezing. Once someone with me finally grabbed the attention of staff and they took my temperature, they saw a number that made their eyes bulge. In Celsius, it would be 40.5. In Fahrenheit, it was 105. Even if you're not a doctor, I'm guessing you know that number is too high for a fever. This is the range where your body is literally cooking itself from the inside, and that fever alone can cause death. They instantly admitted me, stuck me with an IV, and started pumping chilled saline to try to bring my temperature under control. My body temperature actually rose at first, from 105 to 106, 40.5 to 41. Never a good sign. The blood tests and my history made pyelo easy to diagnose. I was started on IV antibiotics right away, but something else happened over those few days where I was my own inferno. I hallucinated. A couple things to be explicit about. First, I knew that I was hallucinating. This seems like a minor distinction, but there are times when people don't realize that what they're perceiving isn't actually there. And that's a big red flag for certain mental illnesses. Additionally, I'm a little proud that despite feeling like I was going to die, I still had control enough of my mind to distinguish what was real and what was not. Second, this wasn't the first time my perceptions were warped like that. To that point, I had not used any drugs in that way. Extended periods without sleep, though, can also trigger seeing things that aren't there, such as foolishly trusting someone and ending up being awake for a solid 5 days. At the end of that time, it was surreal to see smoke trails come off of the faces of everyone, to see persistent images of lights trailing behind the objects they were attached to, and to experience one of the best nights of sleep I ever had on a thin, crappy carpet over a concrete floor. The part of this particular hallucinatory experience that always stuck out to me was meeting death in my hospital bed. She was surprised I could see her. She told me her name. She said that she frequently visited hospitals for pickups, as one might expect, and had a handful of coworkers that frankly she didn't respect because she was relatively young and new at the gig. She was surprised I could see her at all, since basically she was told during training only those who were dying could see those who wore the long black cloak and carried the scythe. Part of the uniform, she shrugged. But in addition to that kit, she was wearing an axe. Her guitar, she said. After her shift, she would hit up a bar and unpack it and throw down some music. We chatted for a minute, since she said she was almost done with her shift. And no, I don't feel like revealing any more of this, since I've had a realization since then that since I was tripping, it was just me talking to a version of myself that was working hard as it could to convince me I would not die that afternoon. When I had this flash of insight, I refracted it through the idea of the inner child. And it made sense that this version of me would try to play some trick to convince me things would be okay, and I'd live to see another day. It's a strange way to think about what I experienced near death, but when death tells you you'll be fine, you too will relent whether you'll continue to be or instead cease. It was comforting myself when I needed to be comforted most. My inner child is a trickster. She's also an adult thanks to the work I did to protect her when I was hurting the most. I'm thankful she showed up that day she chose to dress like a ghost. Yeah, interesting event that I experienced. Please check out the link tree for all the links. I'm still getting adjusted to doing all this on the schedule. Please help me out through the Ko-Fi if you can. A couple bucks does go a long way. I am hoping to pull off Bad Idea Saturday this week after last weekend where my body just decided to nope out after overdoing it a bit. Aphrodite at chaos.social is my main Mastodon handle. I do have a counter social account at Almost Live. I should have my Twitters in a holding pattern by this point that this releases due to, well, the situation on that particular site. The cohost.org/graphical should have the notes for this program, though this week I am on the road, so my ability to update it may be impacted, and I'm getting a lot of things done that I didn't expect. I want to thank you for listening, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.